topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Welcome everyone. It's another episode of Light Up Your Life, and my name's Arthi, and it's Friday, and we're already in the second week of August. I know for us here it's definitely humid, and so as much as I always tell you to stay focused and be outside in nature, you just want to be mindful of the times that you do go. I'm really excited about today's topic. It means a lot to me personally and professionally to talk about healing and having a mindset that is all wrapped around healing when we talk about disease prevention, looking at disease, and just the overall outcome that a patient and their family can have. Today's special guest is Jeanette Carbajal. I hope I'm saying her last name right. I'll ask her to correct me. I always say her first name. Jeanette is an awesome healing mentor. She is a holistic cancer coach, a healing mindset coach. She has background in sound therapy, and the list goes on. I couldn't even take the time to list off all of her wonderful credentials. She does amazing work with business executives in the healing mindset, and also has found passion in being really passionate about breast health. And so I'm really excited about that conversation about how she has decided to become such an advocate in that program and arena. Jeanette, for me personally, has really helped me to start to formulate my own business plans and helped me to really look at things in a lens that is always client focused, patient first, and family first. And so I really appreciate her mentorship for me professionally and personally. So without no further ado, I kindly request Jeanette to come on with us today.
Hi, Arti.
Hi, Jeanette. Jeanette, let me ask you how we pronounce your last name.
Yes, Carbajal. Jeanette Carbajal.
Jeanette Carbajal. It's a beautiful name.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that notice of telling people, by the book it says get out in nature, but always be mindful, listen to your body, and know the elements that you're involved with, and always be mindful of that.
Totally. Jeanette, can you start off by sharing your own personal story of how you got involved in this work and how, essentially it is your calling to be doing this, but how did it start for you?
Yeah, so feels like a decade ago, but it was about 6 years ago. And I'm really open about saying how long ago it is because some people can put a projection onto it. And I want to be always, upfront from the beginning. About 6 years ago, my family was riddled with a couple conditions, diseases, and cancers. And along that route, I became a caregiver for 3 elderly parents at the same time under one roof. And the number one thing that made the difference in all of their healing was truly when they were able to focus on a healing mindset. I call it a healing mindset now, but it's really focused to the positive future rather than dwelling in the past, because then ultimately that becomes our destiny. Mm-hmm. And so I saw the things that made a huge difference between each and every one of them. And I started to first no longer be that what's called like a helicopter mom, the hovering moms. And I had to stop being a hovering caregiver and really step back and giving them the freedom of choice, giving them their power back. And along that line, a lot of people started asking me, what did you do? How did you do that? And how did you stay neutral in times of controversy or times of what normally could hurt someone's either ego or their value system? And I was like, I had to remind myself, when it's not about me, Two, I had to take care of myself. And when I understand it's not about me and I took care of myself, you're able to stay in this really neutral state. So fast forward, my grandmother ended up passing from complications. And when it was at, and I'm going to go a little morbid here, okay? Hope that's okay with your audience.
Yes, please.
When we were having her burial ceremony, and her casket was going down on the side of the dirt, I could see in like wood. I was like, "What is that?" And everybody just looked at me like, "That's Grandpa." And I was like, "Wait a minute. He had died 10 years before from cancer as well. Why did we not bring all the beautiful lessons we learned from him forward for my grandmother's journey?" And it almost felt like there was this like disease amnesia that happened, and that our family wasn't able to bring those beautiful blessings and lessons forward. So I said, no, going forward, for my parents that are still here, for myself, and for anyone else I know, I'm going to teach them how to do that, how to bring it forward. And at that time, it was just an idea and it was just a dream. And since then, I have had taken mentorship, done many professional trainings in order to, one, understand what that really takes, and two, how to help people do it, because it can feel overwhelming sometimes. And we get to do it with ease. So that's kind of my background.
That's awesome, Jeanette. And I forgot to introduce today's title, but it's Ease the Disease. So for you to even bring up that word and looking at healing in a transformative lens, because we are so used to looking at trajectory of a disease in a very, oh my gosh, this is it, right? The diagnosis becomes the everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people do say that everything, I am, this is what I have, so what I got. I always say, sure, but can you just add right now? I have this disease right now. I have this right now. And I actually learned that from a really awesome acupuncturist that I went to, because he was like checking my liver lines and he was doing all this really fun stuff. And he's like, you have a blood deficiency. I was like, oh my goodness, am I dying? And he's like, no, this is just what you have right now. By the end of today, it'll change. And he's like, you should always look at everything like that. I said, you're so right. This is what I have right now. And the next choice, the next decision can change that.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And we talk about mindset and presence of mind, but just even in this facet, everyone, I myself, right? If as simple pain, you feel like it's ever long, right? For someone who's facing a chronic illness, it becomes this timeline of forever.
It can absolutely feel like that. And I understand that too. You have to understand, for a lot of my clients and a lot of people that I've worked with, they say, my grandmother had it, my mother had it, my sister had it, now I'm going to have it. I've seen them live all their years. So in their eyes, it does feel like a forever. But forever is in consciousness. It's not totally real. We have to just remind ourselves. But that takes training, and it takes a certain level of consciousness to understand that. And it's one of the greatest gifts that I have, is to teach my clients certain levels of consciousness in order to transcend disease.
That's amazing. So before we even keep delving in this, Jeanette, so you said 6 years ago is when you, as a caregiver, but can you talk about all the other roles and kind of just, what you have, almost your journey before even getting to this point?
Yeah. Before even getting to, so my journey before 6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So I always had a heart of service. So I worked in high school. I had my own club. So we did. I don't know if you know the Lions Club. They have a Leo's Club.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a part of the Leo's Club, and I was the president of all California, of all the Leos. As a little high school girl, always wanted to do good and do of service, because I saw so many people not honored in society. So we would support rehabilitation centers. And the elderly community. And I had this huge heart for them, because I was like, these are precious, most wisest people out there. They can teach us so much. The people in rehab taught me at a young age, at 17 years old, that you can keep going. You can still do this. There is more. Don't give up. Our past is not our future. And I remember just being so impacted by that. I was like, man, if I'm learning all this here, imagine what else I can learn. And very quickly did I realize that it's not the lens that everybody sees. Wisdom through trauma sometimes. And I became really intrigued with that. Then I From there, I went into the workforce while simultaneously going to college. And in college, I saw some things because I was about to go into pre-med. That's what my heart was set on. I was like, I want to go to pre-med. I realized that my eyes did not see eye to eye with some of the paradigms, and that's okay. I then took mentorship through a lot of other professional networks, a lot of oncologists that took me under their wings in order to teach me the things that they wish they can do with their client if they had unlimited amount of time, which is really those heart connections and those heart conversations. And yeah.
I always ask this question, Jeanette, because ultimately you said service has always been in your storyline, and it always weaves, right? So even though you said you didn't go into that medical profession, you're still in that service role of providing exactly what we do need, the liaison, right? There's a missing gap. I think you and I both know the missing gap of what families and clients need when they do get their diagnosis, and for you to be able to offer your services.
Yeah, and one, I'm just going to put one tiny note there that every person who sees themselves or feel as if they have a heart of service, understand that not only are you a person of service, I'm amazing at that, but you're also a caregiver. And you probably have roles, like you mentioned that question, roles as being a caregiver. So I was a caregiver of all the Leos of California at a young age. I was the caregiver in management. As a manager, you're a caregiver as a babysitter. You're just a natural caregiver. And I just saw myself always thriving in caregiving for others and being of service. And it was like two and two. You can't separate the two.
Yeah, no, and that's a great definition, because you're right. Caregiving is not just what we sometimes in our American society say. It's like when you are taking care of someone who is distressed or ill, it is really all of our roles. Or a mother, we kind of have separations, but you're right. It is definitely the idea of the all-encompassing roles, whether and we all have them.
We sure do.
Well,
We sure
yes,
do.
I love for you to that. I think the more people get empowered with the positives behind words, then they can really start to heal and feel positive about themselves. So for you to even bring up, okay, because some people do say, I've never taken care of anyone who's sick, right? You hear that a lot, right? I don't know how to, I'm not going to know what to do. I hear this a lot, right? I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have any experience. And so for you to even bring up how they have acts of service throughout their timeline,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Mhm.
So Jeanette, can you share a little bit about your passions now in your work and where, because you do so much, but what is it? And well, let's start with the breast health advocacy, because I think that's going to speak to a lot of our audience, especially, October is coming up, which is a big month for people to really feel the advocacy, even if they haven't been touched by it. You see a lot of the Susan B. Komen runs and just things that are happening in general. But yeah.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about that. So my heart goes out to everybody with breast cancer. First of all, that was the first cancer I ever heard about or knew about as a child. So, and I feel like all the first cancers in someone's life always hits like somewhere really special in their life, especially when it's somebody that they love or they know that they really care for. And so when I saw the statistic, 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime, I was like, oh my goodness, if only I looked at the people that I invite over to a barbecue, well, pre-COVID, that I would invite over to a barbecue, that means like 2 of us would have breast cancer in our lifetime. And I was like, why is it that there is so much talk about research of curing cancer? Well, we could talk about prevention. Why is it that women don't really understand their breasts? And I remember going to my first breast exam at my doctor's office, and she did a manual. And I was like, how do you know? I was like, how do you know what to touch? How do you know what's good, what's bad? Because I was like, it's just so confusing to me. And she's just like, well, you kind of just know. I said, but how do you know? Shouldn't I know about my own breast? And she's just like, well, you could do it. We could do it. I could take you to get an ultrasound or something. And I was like, but I want to know. So then I remember having the ultrasound and telling the person, I think it was a guy. I think back then they had guys do it to girls too, And then I was like, stop. I want to know what's that and show me where it is with my finger. I wanted to understand it because when I got the results, I wanted to understand, is this my normal or is this not? And for me to truly know it. So it became this evolution of what supports breast health, what doesn't, what is
Mhm.
good for breast support, like physical support, like holding up,
Mhm.
what is normal for certain things, changes to happen in the breast. And so I actually created the Breast Empowerment Project. And the Breast Empowerment Project is actually a teaching course. It's a mini teaching course, and it's really, really affordable. It's about $11. And I always recommend pay $11, go in, download everything, and get out if that's all you want. But if you want community, stay in the community for $11 a month. And we do monthly self-breast exams together. And so I teach them how to do that, and I empower them to understand their breast better than their doctor does, because I believe every woman should know their breasts really intimately.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're bringing this up, Jeanette, because they give you the pamphlet, or you'll go to a fair, or you'll get the pamphlet, or you'll go to the mammogram. Everyone's thinking that the mammogram is the end all these days, right? I've encountered that. We all sometimes take for granted the self-exam, but you've never been taught, right? Like, because
Right?
lymph, especially in our breast, lymph and what feels like, it's very
Nodules.
hard to tell the nodules, right? And so
Hmm.
I just think for you to have created this program is so awesome, because again, the actual sticking the notice in your shower ain't doing anything for anyone. I personally think it's very hard to be able to tell what is what and what
Right.
feels right, like you're saying.
Yeah,
And
and so I actually did a survey and I sent it to all my networks and I asked them to send it to all their networks, and the results that I got shocked me. It was less than 20% of women check their breasts once a year.
wow.
Hmm.
Did you say 20?
20, less than 20% of women check their breasts one, sometimes two. I think the answer was 0 to 2. So 0 to 2 times a year, less than 20, which means that there's a huge opportunity of women being so disconnected from their breast. There's also an amazing woman that she shared her story saying that her loofah fell and she didn't want to pick it up. And so she actually used soap to like clean her breasts, and that's how she was able to feel her own. So imagine, just not literally, we're doing everything not to touch our own breasts.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so just adding that, and the fact that so 70-ish% of biopsies are benign.
You said 70% are benign biopsies, right?
Therefore, we need to, which therefore we need to understand what is our normal, what is a real
Mhm.
reason for a biopsy and what's not. And sometimes it's women going over and over and over to the same spot, the same part, the same biopsy sample. Um,
Yeah.
and so just about understanding our own breast better. And that's all.
No, that is amazing. That's amazing. So, and we'll talk about this later too. But everyone, just like Jeanette had mentioned, you can check out that program. Um, but and it's affordable, which is always important, I think, for so many people who are like, well, and then you brought up self care. So I think you're gonna when I even before me asking this question, do you feel like this is part of the self care that you feel is important for? And I'm gonna say women in specific.
Yes, so I actually call it a breast empowerment day. So
Mm.
inside of the breast empowerment project, together as a community, we create a breast empowerment day. It's at the first of every month, and then we have a reminder for the 8th of every month, because 1 in 8, I believe, not today if you take action. And so on the first, and then we have a reminder on the 8th. If you weren't able to get it scheduled on the first, you do it on the 8th, and it's actually it's an entire routine, from showering correctly in order to then have the breast prepared to examine yourself in the right way. And then we also encourage anybody to come and do it. We don't do this on camera. I'm the only one on camera. Everybody else is privately in their own place. But for you to do it with your partner, whether your partner is male or female, to do it with your partner, because breast cancer does not discriminate.
Wow. And then there you will have it, where you get to have strength and power in numbers,
Yeah.
which, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So breast empowerment program is what you have given it. Yes.
Yes.
So everyone, Jeanette always has the best titles for things, and she encourages you to come up with these meaningful ways of looking at things so that you just want to dive in. That's awesome. All right, Jeanette. So can you share some other one of your roles is that you do work with business executives in their so can you describe what that program looks like? How do you help them to develop kind of a healing mindset, or some tips that you might have for our audience that's listening in?
Yeah, I'd love to. So traditionally, I've been known as somebody who works with executives, but it's really all entrepreneurship and industry leaders. So it's women who hold a large container for caregiving. So they're a management role, they're leading a company, or they're somebody who just has a lot of people under them. And I help them. So traditionally, these women in power, in a place of respect, that hold a lot of, I would say they hold the bottom line really with their hands. They're able to work it. These women have always been able to manage all the plates. You know, maybe a family member, a parent, a caregiver at home, their business life, their self-help, their self-care, their personal and spiritual development. But a diagnosis has kind of taken them off their center. And so my job is to help them stay centered, stay focused, and in a program called Extreme Change Management. And Extreme Change Management is able to help them continue doing the roles that they desire to, if they desire to, and how to do it with ease, and being able to use it as a healing crutch. And so we are able to do that together. Many of the women that I've worked with, I've helped them restructure their days, which then in turn restructures their business so that they can really use their genius when they need to, and they could either find a new right hand or someone to hand off the business to if we need to for a long period of time, depending on treatment, in addition to holding on to certain goals for the business so that the bottom line doesn't drop and the employees feel safe and secure. And I also facilitate that conversation if they desire to share it with their companies. So that's traditionally what I'm known for. I do take only about 11 clients a year because it's a pretty full encompassing role that we do together. And then the other other thing that I do, the third thing that I do is I teach and I educate. And I have the Healing Business School, H.E.A.L.I.N.G. And this Healing Business School is really for people who have either been the helper, the healer themselves, or they healed themselves, and their businesses have not been able to feel safe and secure. So in their businesses, there's either some micro traumas that happened throughout their business. I help them, quote unquote, and I'm doing that for everybody's listening in through the radio, quote unquote, heal their business, which is really marketing copy. It is how to feel safe putting your offering out there, and in turn then help other people heal and start that healing process all over again. So the Healing Business School just felt really, really great. And we have now helped over 35 practitioners, whether they're retired doctors, whether they're people leading in different industry sectors when it comes around disease, cancers, chronic pain, and now COVID. I've helped them completely transform their practice so that they can have a coaching, a cash process as well.
Wow. I'm glad you mentioned COVID, because we do know that so many people who do have businesses did have to shut down. But so to have someone like you provide mentorship, I imagine did help save some businesses, or helped to do that.
I did. I helped a couple of hotels that had to close down because of restrictions, like here in Los Angeles County, and really gave them a 3-part wellness series on one, how to prepare yourself, your family, and your finances for this dip in income, how to stay strong until they're open up again. And then also the third one was when they reopened their hotel, how to reintegrate so that you're not in fear, like somebody just coughed. How can I react? I know that person had COVID a year ago. How should I approach them? And so it was a lot about reintegration as well.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's really necessary.
Yeah,
These conversations are necessary.
Absolutely, Jeanette. And I'm glad you brought up reintegration, because I keep I keep harping on this idea, because we've kind of, and COVID is always our topic of the last 2 years. But the fact is that we go through these these periods, but we haven't necessarily talked about how reintegration looks like, and how many people who do have comorbidity with having had COVID, but having a pre-existing condition, which is a big deal, but it seems to have gone through the cracks because COVID becomes their primary diagnosis, correct?
Right. And you have, and I always say the COVID only made or put a flat, what do you call that thing? Spotlight? COVID only
Spotlight.
put a spotlight
Mhm.
on things that have not been addressed in society.
Mhm.
And so whether it's cancer and you're reintegrating into your life after treatment or NED, like
Mhm.
that should have been taken care of. And that's why I teach that reintegration phase.
Mhm.
COVID as well, along with just like having trauma and reintegrating into life as well. All of these are traumas, micro traumas, societal traumas that
Mhm.
need to have processes in place to help people reintegrate. It's necessary to feel whole. And if
Mhm.
we don't feel whole, we don't have a healing mindset. Therefore, we're going in the opposite direction of what we really desire to go.
Gotcha. So tell me, you use the word whole. You have to feel whole in order to, which is so true. So where do you start with someone who is feeling like, for example, someone who has just received the cancer diagnosis and is trying to figure out what they're supposed to do and what steps to take? Where would you, and that's a deeply loaded question, I know, but how do you help in that regard to get to from a little bit of a point A to a point B?
To get to point A, we start off with what do you value most today? That's the first question. I ask them, what do you value?
Mhm.
That's the first point. Because if I don't know what that person's core value is, I don't know how to support them and I don't know how to protect that at all costs. When you ask, so if I ask you, Archie, what is your core value?
Your
What would it be?
service.
Service. Okay. So then if there was a alternate universe and there was a disease, okay, diagnosis given, and I asked you what is your core value and you said service, would you say that it's still service at that day, that same day?
I would say service to at that point, when I think service holistically for all, then I would definitely say service to myself at that point.
Service to yourself. Okay.
Mhm.
So then once I ask you that question and I know service to yourself, I'm going to say, okay, so what treatments would you want to do?
I got you.
Usually who cares for themselves and they start talking about treatments. They don't want to be treated. They want to treat
Mhm.
themselves.
Mhm.
Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yes. Yes.
There's been many people where I ask them what is their core value and they'll say family. They're like, so I'm going to fly to Germany and I'm going to do these things for 9 months and I'm not going to see my family. What we end up doing is subconsciously creating a fight in our mind and our body
Mhm.
doesn't even want to be there because we didn't protect the core value, which is family. That core value has to be present in the daily day in the healing journey. And so that's where I would say everybody should start with. And that's for everything, whether choosing a career, a healing path, or a life partner. Do you see eye to eye in your core value?
Well, that's a beautiful statement to keep it simple. We talk a lot about simplicity in each episode, but like the fact of you are bringing up core value today, and everything that I know is always when working with clients, it is core value. But to remind everyone, especially in disease, look out that is so essential to bringing up.
Yeah, it really is. I'm going to tell you when somebody didn't take my advice.
Mm-hmm.
This person was a scientist rooted in science, rooted in science, rooted in science. And I said, what do you value? He said, science. And I said, okay, awesome. How do you want to heal? Like, what's the plan? Like, what's on the books? If you want to share it with me. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do everything holistic, even though I don't believe it. He called me later and he's like, I understand what the value was because I didn't believe it with every part of my whole being. I wasn't able to assimilate it. So later on, he wanted to work through that. He wanted to actually disempower this belief around science. And I was able to help him find science for holistic treatments. And he was able to stay rooted in that as well. But it was an eye-opening experience and unfortunately validating. And I say unfortunate because nobody should go through that pain. But it was an unfortunately an validating experience.
Yeah.
as a practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah, you're reminding me of the idea behind a core value is intrinsically and extrinsically like it's almost like if somebody could see our heart truly open, it would be that idea. Like it would be carried in all facets of our life.
All facets.
So for someone who is undergoing or getting ready for and I use cancer, but for any disease that has just identified, for them literally to have to shed their layers, they have to start at this essential piece.
True.
What
And
I hear.
that is step one. Then I take them through an entire experience. Yeah.
Wow. So Jeanette, you talked about self-care. Can you tell me, because a lot of this is also about practitioners and people and taking care. How do you take care of yourself, and how do you recommend practitioners take care of themselves while they're doing this intensive work? A labor
Yeah.
of love, no doubt, but intensive work.
I always say create your menu of what brings you joy and sparks you up, first of all. So I don't have like a really strict or rigid routine when it comes to self-care.
Mhm.
If I feel like in a low place or I feel depleted in some sort, I'll go to this menu of things that I know guarantee will put me into a state of spark, joy, creativity, connection of my head and my heart in order to then take action in this world. So it's a create your menu. So a lot of people say, well, I do meditation, but it doesn't do anything with me. I'm like, take it off that menu. If it doesn't do anything for you, don't do it. Only do things that bring you invigoration, life, and light into your life first. Then you're able to be like, okay, I feel like I want to create something, but I feel in a lull. Let me come to this menu of self-care, and I know I have about 5 minutes, so I can do A, B, and C. Which one do I have the things to do? And it makes it faster than like, oh, but then I'm going to have to run a bath and it's going to take half an hour. Then I have to clean the bath because I just washed my dog. And then it's like, oh, I have to take my yoga mat, but I have to find it in the garage somewhere. And I hope there's not a spider that jumps on me again. But you create the fast track way of taking action. So create this little menu of self-care for you. And I like to put little time stamps next to it. So I'm like, that'll be about 5 minutes. 5 minutes to get that joy.
Gotcha.
Because meditation for me in 5 minutes doesn't do anything, but meditation for me in 20 minutes does. And so it's just about putting not just the thing, but the light switch. When does the light switch turn on? It could be whatever that duration is.
Yeah, that's awesome. A menu. We always talk about a survey of, like I love a la carte services for individuals who get an opportunity to look at different things, right, that they never thought of. And for you to even say a menu of self-care, which you have evaluated, and then you have it in a place that is visual too, right? A lot of it's about like, because we stay here with our self-care plan, right? But it needs some outlet. And then timestamps, you said, because sometimes you're right. You talked about lulls, and maybe just sipping some coffee or some tea, which might
Whatever.
be a thing. Or I think we forget that it doesn't need to be like, oh, I have to get my nails done, right? Or I want to get my nails done. What is it that carries you through and not even carries you through, what is it that you enjoy, like you said, spark joy through the day?
Oh, me?
Oh, no, I'm saying in general.
Oh.
But yeah, would love to hear from you too. What are things that do spark your joy, so we can get some people thinking about some ideas that might
Yeah. So I love olfactory. So I love smell. Okay. So I have to have like smell around me, whether it is an essential oil, whether it's a diffuser, whether it's certain scent of flowers. It could really be anything, but it's smell. Smell is the number one thing to trigger our olfactory, but also to help us calm down the parasympathetic nervous system when these smells are related to positive resource or sourcing. So that's like huge. So smell is always big. I love to have light and greenery. And when I see things like in the background, I have this big plant. Can you see it? Yeah. I love to see greenery that brings me joy, that brings me life, that brings me love. And it's a reminder, hey, I'm not here alone. I have to go talk to that one later and say, hey, what's up? Thanks for making my day Thank you for making my day. So those are some of the things. And then I always have a drink of choice that brings me comfort.
Mm.
So I do that. And then I love like little sprays. So I like rose water spray. It just feels like a luxurious bath that I'm able to do in a second. So those are things that I do throughout my day.
Nice. So just a spritz, you're saying? A quick spritz of...
Quick spritz. This is rose water, just decoction, and just go.
Yes. That's awesome. And then you're saying, yes, essential oils, which throughout the day, and you do you call one that do you have one that invokes, you just kind of really look for ones that invoke your spirit, or like you just know? Is that how you look
Yes.
at it?
Sometimes I just know, like sometimes like I need a refreshing feeling. So then I'll go head towards like citrus. So like I love bergamot. Bergamot's like one of my favorites when it comes to like a refreshing. If I need to calm down, I'll do like a mixture of like geranium, lavender, and cardamom. And like those are very grounding. Or like I'll do cedar wood, and those are like immediate grounding if I really need it, especially if I'm really, really high up in my mind, like masterminding or whatever it is that I'm doing. And then when I have anxious feelings or anxiety, there's a few that I also reach to. Lemon being one of them, actually.
Mm. I wouldn't have known about I mean, I know lemon for other reasons, but I wouldn't have thought as in terms of it bringing it down.
Yeah. To help with anxiety sometimes, and I'm just going to say this word sometimes, and I don't want to go into anxiety because that's a totally different world and it's not what I'm focusing on. But when it comes to me and my work personally, lemon is, for me, I get anxious with the inability to complete things, so feeling incomplete, not being able to feel accomplished, and actually lemon helps with that.
Wow, amazing. And we hear a lot about essential oils, but you don't hear, oftentimes practitioners don't get a chance to talk about how they use it for themselves. Or a spritz of like you use rose water, but it'd be different ones that could be created. And then I imagine things for you seasonally too. You probably have different seasons of change.
Totally. I absolutely do.
Yeah, that's great. So Jeanette, talking about location for you, how do you feel like one of the things you discuss with your clients when they're looking, because this is, your life is turned upside down, so you're basically like taking a look at everything through that spotlight tunnel vision lens. Do you often find discussions of purpose, discussions of where they're going to live, because finances come into play in this conversation all the time, right? I mean, we have people who, like you said, so what are some of the things that common themes that you do see occurring with the work and the clients that you see when they are diagnosed?
Yeah, I feel a lot of the women that I work with primarily who are entrepreneurs and executives, they do want to hold on to their purpose, but I always ask them, we have to release the purpose actually while you're focused on healing. We'll make it more of a mission for the business. So when you're in the business, you're focused on it. When you're out of the business, you're focused on your own healing mission. So we kind of separate the two for a little bit because we can be so enmeshed, it can feel like we're abandoning our purpose when we're away from our service. And so I actually have them separate the two just for momentary. And we put a timestamp also. We're only going to do this until X date and then we'll reevaluate it. So that's one thing that I do say. Another thing that I see, and I know you mentioned, is it could feel all encompassing and it feels like, what was the word you said, RT? I want to say the exact word you said.
I think I said, well, I didn't use vortex, but this tunnel of, I mean, it's just like your life is turned upside down. It's a vortex. Yeah. I don't remember exactly what word I used, but.
Yeah. So anytime our health is at risk, at jeopardy, hurt, or injured, our health, it's always going to feel like it's upside down, whether it's a long journey to finding a diagnosis, whether it's a diagnosis like COVID, or whether it's just the flu, it flips our life upside down. I want everybody here listening with us, don't just think of this as big chronic conditions or big diseases. You could use this for everyday flus, because that person, when they are ill or their health is injured in some sort or not intact, they feel like their world is upside down, and always have compassion for that.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Even, when we talk about Yes, it's not even just our big ones, like we were saying. You're right. Even things that take anything that you said flips our world upside down, which is what we're trying to bring up here is how do you ease the disease or the illness or the ailment?
Yeah.
No. So do you often have conversations with your clients where then through the lens that they just are evaluating their life so much so that they may even decide to uproot themselves, or do you feel like there's some changes that come up in these conversations that um, that because it's like this life fast forward, right? When you have some of these conditions.
Yeah, I love that term that you said, life fast forward. Yes, absolutely. So normally when people come to me, and people come to me first for a healing roadmap. And so it's a 2-hour experience where I ask about 72 questions and the roadmap gets created based on their desires and wants. And when I ask them these questions, when I present the roadmap, they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't know I wanted that. I was like, no, you told me you wanted that, but they never saw it in how much they wanted it. Um, and so, right, in those 2-hour conversations of the healing roadmap, they do talk about where I want to live, where I'm going to go, who's going to be there, who's not, what I'm going to do after, how do I desire to eat? How do I desire to think? How do I desire to love others through this? And so, yeah, all of that comes absolutely full frontal. And that's what I want to say, frontal, because it could be hiding back here and I just need to bring it to the front.
Totally. That's awesome. And again, in this lens, in this time, to have something where, because as we know, when the diagnosis is, if it was cancer, with the oncologist gives a diagnosis, you're going through, right? And I know one of the things that we often had discussed in the course that you had provided for me was like, well, where does the fact go of someone who may not even want conventional treatment? So having this panel that you're saying, this roadmap to really things that I didn't even know I wanted, but that's conversation.
Yeah. It's conversation. It's having the courage to have the conversation and the courage to voice your choices. These roadmaps are what I call a boot camp, not for me or anybody else to be your hero. It's not your caregiver to be your hero. It's for you to stand up and be your own hero.
So Jeanette, where do people find, like, how do they know about you? Is it through a lot of referral or?
Yeah, so mostly referrals. I have a lot of referrals. I also used to teach at a school for a long time, so 500 students would just send me referrals all the time. I have my school. I teach at quite a few professional universities where I teach either bedside manner for practitioners, caregivers, people going into healthcare to actually learn about how to protect themselves with self-care so that they can be fully present with their clients. So there's a lot of ways, but if you want to find me immediately, you can go to Instagram, healingmindset_, and my website is www.JeanetteCarbajal.com. And for everybody listening today, for the next week, I'm actually going to have free 15-minute Q&A if you want to do some kind of Q&A with me and to see if the healing roadmap is right for you.
Okay, so this is for this upcoming week?
Yes.
What perfect timing. So everyone, that's the week. We are looking at the week of the 5th. Is it the 15th? Monday the 15th?
No, so from actually starting today on.
Today.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone who's watching the pre-recording or listening at 8:13 all the way on. So they would just go on your website and log in for on your schedule and take a 15-minute block?
Exactly. And we'll chat, see if there's anything, if maybe there's one pressing question you have, and I could answer it in that time. I'm always happy to do that. But if a healing roadmap feels more aligned, then we can talk about that as well.
That's awesome. Jeanette, before we still have some time left, so I want to use all of our time. What are some other things that you can share publicly that are in the works for you? And also, what would you like to leave our audience with if you had any? Because you've offered so many great nuggets and simplified things, which I love, because life is simple. We just, as humans, can complicate it with our wonderful but beastly brains. So I'm just always humble when guests such as yourself help to simplify so people, and I myself also, we all are reminded, right? That core value was a big thing that I think anyone listening in today can really take. Healing mindset, what that looks like, and how simple it can be when you go. And your great idea of the self-care menu, which is beautiful. I mean, such a beautiful way to start for everyone to look at that as an activity.
Yeah. So you just want some tips. So probably one of the tips is when life feels overwhelming, it's because you probably have too much on your plate. So it's all about taking off your responsibilities, your expectations, just subtracting. So I'm truly an advocate for subtracting the things in life when you need to focus on you, the singular. Understand that you are not many and you need to just subtract. So that's one. That's like the biggest thing. And then when we feel like there's a mess, it's usually just because there's a matter of decisions that we haven't made. So when you can take care of yourself, you do some self-care, you feel totally rooted and grounded, feeling whole, that's a perfect time to then start making some decisions so that this mess does not feel like a mess any longer, and you can feel like you're in more control.
That's awesome.
So really simple. Those are like some really simple things. And if you have somebody that you know that is going through a disease of any type of diagnosis, any single kind of diagnosis or ill health, don't ask them, let me know if you need anything. Please don't ask them that. It's the most disempowering sentence because all they need is so much and they don't know how to ask for it. Say, hey, how can I love you best?
So beautiful. I even think that's a great one for when we talk about grief and loss, right?
Yes.
When we say, but how can I feel to say I'm here? Or like these supportive sentences that really hold that person.
Yeah, and it's how can I love you best? It's probably the number one thing that I will always tell everyone. Like if I can leave one thing in your mind and in your heart for the rest of your life, never ever 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 say let me know if you need anything ever or I'm here for you. No, say how can I love you best today? They'll tell you how they want to be loved. Everybody wants to be loved.
Totally. Jeanette, that's so beautiful. Of course, I can talk to you for hours, but we're out of time for today. But Jeanette, thank you so much. Everyone knows where to find you. We have your website listed, your IG, which has great. I believe on your Instagram, you post a lot of some of these tips that you're offering us as
I
well, and
do.
supportive, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Jeanette, thank you for the gift of your time.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for everything, RT. Thank you for continuing this conversation every single week. And bless you.
Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful week again. And as Jeanette reminded us, stay humble in knowing to stay present and to remind yourself to keep it simple, which she has offered you so many tidbits and tips to do. So you can always listen to the recording and go back and find the ones that really hold dear to your heart and take comfort in them. Have a great week, everyone.